Let me tell you about the last morning I walked through my father's vineyard. I didn't know it would be the last. That's the thing about losing something that was always yours. You don't see it coming, not because you weren't paying attention, because you trusted the wrong people with the wrong things. My name is Abigail Marsh. I am 34 years old. My father spent 22 years building one of the most respected organic vineyards in the Willamette Valley. I spent 12 of those years beside him, dawn to dusk, every harvest, every drought, every season that almost broke us, and the one that finally broke him. When he died, I believed I would inherit what we had built together. I believed this because he had told me, in his own words, in a hospital room, with a document signed and witnessed. 2 weeks later, I sat in an attorney's office and learned that the document the attorney had on file was not the document my father had signed. The names were the same. The date was the same. The paper was different. And the people who had arranged the difference were the people who shared my blood. My name is Abigail Marsh. I am 34 years old. I grew up in the Chehalem Mountains, the specific range of hills southwest of Portland that cups the northern end of the Willamette Valley, the valley that produces some of the finest Pinot Noir in the world, and that has been doing so in increasing earnest since the 1960s, when the first families looked at the climate and the volcanic soil and understood what was possible there. My father, Thomas Marsh, was not one of the original families. He came later, 2001, when I was 11, when he took the money from the sale of his Portland engineering firm and did what engineers sometimes do when they have enough money and enough accumulated frustration with what they have been doing. He made a left turn. He bought 40 acres of hillside, he planted Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and Pinot Gris, and a small block of Gruner Veltliner that never quite worked, but that he kept because he was stubborn about it, in the specific way of men who believe that if you understand it well enough, you can make it do what you want. He built Marsh Vineyard from ground up, literally. He installed the drainage, he designed the trellis systems, he made the decisions on rootstock and clone selection with the specific obsessive rigor of an engineer who had found a problem that combined soil science, microclimatology, biology, and chemistry in ways that kept him interested for the rest of his life. I was 11 when it started. I was 22 when I graduated from Willamette University with a degree in environmental science and came home instead of taking the job offers I had and began working the vineyard full-time. Not because my father asked me to, because I wanted to, because the vineyard was by then as much mine as his. Not legally, not yet, but in the specific way of something you have put your hands into enough times that the knowing of it lives in your body rather than just your mind. I knew those vines, every row, every block, the way the morning fog moved through the Dijon clones on the lower slope, the specific quality of the Chardonnay block in late September when the sugar was right and the acids hadn't broken down yet. I knew them the way you know something you have cared for over years. Not completely, because a vineyard is never completely known, but deeply enough that the knowing is part of who you are. I need to tell you about my family before I tell you the rest. My mother's name is Carol Marsh. She is 61 years old. She and my father were married for 37 years, a long marriage, the kind that produces a specific and complex history between two people who have been through everything together. I want to be honest about my mother because I think honesty is the only way this story is useful. Carol Marsh is not a villain in the simple sense. She's a woman who spent 37 years married to a man who was brilliant and difficult, and who made the decisions in the marriage, not abusively, not cruelly, but in the specific way of a certain generation of men who assumed that their intelligence entitled them to authority, and whose wives either pushed back or accommodated. My mother accommodated. And in the accommodation, over 37 years, she developed a specific relationship with money, the specific anxiety of someone who has never controlled it themselves and who understands at a deep level that its absence is catastrophic. My father dying meant the money could move. My mother understood this.
My brother Ethan understood it too. Ethan is 31, 3 years younger than me. He had not worked the vineyard. He had gone to Portland, done some graduate work, and moved through several careers with the specific restless quality of someone who is smart enough to do many things, but not yet interested enough in any single thing to commit. He was charming, he was funny, he was the family's social center, the one who could make my father laugh even when my father was not inclined to laugh. He was also, I would eventually understand, the one who had decided sometime in the year before my father died that the vineyard was more valuable than any other arrangement, and that he and my mother were better positioned to own it than I was.
My father's illness. It came quickly in the way of certain cancers. Not slowly, not with years of managed decline, but with the specific speed of something that was not caught early enough, and that once caught moved faster than the interventions could. Pancreatic. December to April. 5 months. I was with him for most of those months, at the vineyard, at the hospital, in the specific, exhausting rhythm of serious illness. The appointments, the medications, the bad days and the occasionally less bad days, and the process of a family renegotiating its entire architecture around something that was ending. My mother was present. Ethan was present, more than he had been in years, which I noticed and attributed to love and grief, because those were the most available explanations, and because I was tired enough that I did not have the capacity for other interpretations. My father wanted to talk about the vineyard. Not immediately, not in the first weeks, when the illness was still being processed and the possibility of treatment was still being explored, but by February, when the prognosis had clarified, and my father, being an engineer who liked clear information, had demanded the clearest version available, he wanted to talk about what happened after. He called me into his room at the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon in February. My mother was in the cafeteria with Ethan. It was just the two of us. He told me what he wanted. The conversation in February, I have replayed it more than I can count. Not because I doubt what he said, I do not doubt what he said, because it is the last clear memory I have of my father as himself, before the medications increased and the clarity dimmed in the specific way that end-of-life care sometimes requires. He said, "Abigail, the vineyard is yours. I want you to have it. Not half, all of it. The house, the land, the equipment, the brand. All of it." "What about Mom?" I said. "What about Ethan?" "Your mother will have the Portland property, the house on Westover. It's worth enough. She'll be fine." "And Ethan?" He was quiet for a moment. "Ethan knows the vineyard isn't for him. He doesn't want the work. He wants the value. Those are different things. I'm leaving him what I can in liquid assets. It's fair. Not equal, but fair." "He won't see it that way," I said. "No," my father said. "He won't, but he'll learn to. People generally do." He had Arthur Reese call me the following week. Arthur Reese had been my father's personal attorney for 11 years, not the firm that handled the vineyard's corporate matters, Arthur who handled my father's personal affairs. Arthur came to the hospital. I was present. The document was prepared. The document was signed. 2 nurses witnessed it. I watched my father sign it. I have the date memorized. February 14th. Valentine's Day. My father had not mentioned this. He was not a sentimental man about dates, but I remember it. My father died on April 3rd, at 6:17 in the morning. I was there. My mother was there. Ethan arrived 20 minutes after. He had been staying at the Portland house, which was 30 minutes away. He came through the door 20 minutes after. He was appropriate. Grief appropriate. The things you say, the way you hold someone. He held me. He held my mother. He cried. I believed the crying. I believe it still. Whatever Ethan had been planning, whatever arrangement he and my mother had made, the grief was real. These things are not mutually exclusive.
you can grieve a person and simultaneously have already decided what you are going to do with what they leave behind. I did not understand that yet. I understood it 6 weeks later, in an attorney's office in Portland, on the day I learned that the document on the attorney's file, the one being presented as my father's last will, was not the document I watched him sign on February 14th.
The attorney who called me was not Arthur Reese. His name was Bradley Simmons. Simmons and Associates, a Portland state law firm that had handled the Vineyard's corporate legal matters for several years. I did not know Bradley Simmons well. He had been at several business meetings. He was competent and professional, and had the specific quality of a corporate attorney who is very good at the work and not particularly warm about it. He called me on a Monday in mid-May, 6 weeks after my father's death, to schedule a reading of the estate documents. I said I was looking forward to reviewing Thomas's wishes. He said, "Yes, we'll go through everything at the meeting." There was something in his tone, not wrong exactly, but not what I expected, a quality of preparation, the voice of someone who is ready for a conversation to be difficult. I should have paid more attention to that quality. I didn't. I went to the meeting on Wednesday. My mother was there. Ethan was there. Bradley Simmons was at the head of the conference table. He opened the folder. He began to read. And within 3 minutes, I understood that what he was reading was not what my father had told me. The document Bradley Simmons read distributed the estate as follows: the Chehalem Mountain Vineyard and all associated property, land, buildings, equipment, brand, inventory, to Carol Marsh and Ethan Marsh in equal shares. The Portland house on Westover to Carol Marsh. A cash bequest to Abigail Marsh of $50,000. I sat in the conference room and I listened to every word. I did not react. I have thought about why I did not react, why I sat through the entire reading with the specific stillness of someone who has received information that is too large to respond to in real time. Part of it was shock. Part of it was something else. The specific instinct of someone who understands in the moment of receiving information that what you say immediately is part of the record. I did not say anything. When Bradley Simmons finished, he looked at me. He asked if I had questions. "Not today," I said. My mother looked at me. There was something in her expression. Not quite guilt, not quite satisfaction. Something in between, the specific expression of someone who has done something they justified and is monitoring for the consequences. Ethan was looking at the table. "Abigail," my mother said. "Your father—" I said, "Not today," I said. I stood up. I thanked Bradley Simmons. I walked out. I sat in my car in the parking garage of the building on Southwest 5th Avenue, and I called Arthur Reese. Arthur Reese answered on the second ring. "Abigail," he said, "I've been waiting for your call. Not hello, not how are you. I've been waiting for your call." "You know," I said. "I know what Thomas signed in February," he said, "and I know what was presented today. I received a copy of the filed document 2 weeks ago." "They're different," I said. "They're different," he confirmed. I sat in the parking garage, the specific concrete gray of a... The attorney who called me was not Arthur Reese. His name was Bradley Simmons. Simmons and Associates, a Portland state law firm that had handled the Vineyard's corporate legal matters for several years. I did not know Bradley Simmons well. He had been at several business meetings. He was competent and professional, and had the specific quality of a corporate attorney who is very good at the work and not particularly warm about it. He called me on a Monday in mid-May, 6 weeks after my father's death, to schedule a reading of the estate documents. I said I was looking forward to reviewing Thomas's wishes. He said, "Yes, we'll go through everything at the meeting." There was something in his tone, not wrong exactly, but not what I expected, a quality of preparation, the voice of someone who is ready for a conversation to be difficult. I should have paid more attention to that quality. I didn't. I went to the meeting on Wednesday. My mother was there. Ethan was there. Bradley Simmons was at the head of the conference table. He opened the folder. He began to read. And within 3 minutes, I understood that what he was reading was not what my father had told me. The document Bradley Simmons read distributed the estate as follows: the Chehalem Mountain Vineyard and all associated property, land, buildings, equipment, brand, inventory, to Carol Marsh and Ethan Marsh in equal shares. The Portland house on Westover to Carol Marsh. A cash bequest to Abigail Marsh of $50,000. I sat in the conference room and I listened to every word. I did not react. I have thought about why I did not react, why I sat through the entire reading with the specific stillness of someone who has received information that is too large to respond to in real time. Part of it was shock. Part of it was something else. The specific instinct of someone who understands in the moment of receiving information that what you say immediately is part of the record. I did not say anything. When Bradley Simmons finished, he looked at me. He asked if I had questions. "Not today," I said. My mother looked at me. There was something in her expression. Not quite guilt, not quite satisfaction. Something in between, the specific expression of someone who has done something they justified and is monitoring for the consequences. Ethan was looking at the table. "Abigail," my mother said. "Your father—" I said, "Not today," I said. I stood up. I thanked Bradley Simmons. I walked out. I sat in my car in the parking garage of the building on Southwest 5th Avenue, and I called Arthur Reese. Arthur Reese answered on the second ring. "Abigail," he said, "I've been waiting for your call." Not hello, not how are you. I've been waiting for your call. "You know," I said. "I know what Thomas signed in February," he said, "and I know what was presented today. I received a copy of the filed document 2 weeks ago." "They're different," I said. "They're different," he confirmed. I sat in the parking garage, the specific concrete gray of a Portland parking structure, the sound of distant cars. "Arthur," I said, "tell me what I need to do." Arthur told me, and then I found my own attorney. Not because I didn't trust Arthur, I trusted him completely, but because Arthur had been my father's attorney, and what I needed now was someone who was mine. Her name was Dana Yuen. She had been practicing estate and probate litigation in Portland for 18 years. Carmen Vidal would have called her exactly the right person for something like this. She had a specific quality, the quality of someone who has spent 18 years in rooms where families fight over what the dead intended, and who has learned to separate the grief from the strategy and address both correctly. I met her on Friday. I brought everything I had: the conversation in February, my specific, clear memory of it, Arthur's knowledge of the document he had prepared, the names of the 2 nurses who had witnessed the signing, the date, February 14th, the specific handwriting differences I had noticed between the document Arthur had described and the filed one, because I had asked Simmons for a copy after the reading, which was my right as a named beneficiary, and I had read it 4 times on Thursday evening, and I knew my father's documents, and this one had a quality that was not quite his. Not in the signature was correct,
That was the specific skill of whoever did this. In the surrounding sentences, the structure of the sentences. My father was an engineer. He wrote like an engineer. The document I had watched him sign in February, described by Arthur, was organized the way my father organized things. The filed one was not. Dana Yuen listened to all of it. She asked many questions. At the end, she said, "Abigail, I want to be honest with you about what this case looks like. Will fraud, which is what you're alleging, is among the most difficult estate claims to prove. The burden is significant. You will need the witnesses, you will need Arthur, you will need anything physical that can be compared, handwriting analysis, paper analysis. This will not be fast, this will not be cheap, and there is no guarantee." "I understand," I said. "Why do you want to do it?" she said. "And I want the real answer, not the righteous one. Is it the vineyard? Is it the principal? Is it your father?" I thought about it. "It's all three," I said, "but mostly it's my father. He told me what he wanted, and they changed it when they couldn't stop him. That's the thing I can't let stand." Dana Yuen nodded slowly. "Then let's build the case," she said. Building the case took 4 months. Not the legal case, that would come later, the evidentiary foundation. The 2 witnesses from February, Nurse Kathleen Adler, who remembered the signing because my father had thanked her specifically, and because the date, Valentine's Day, had made the moment memorable. And James Ortega, the second witness, who had kept a note in his personal log, because, as he told Dana, I could see how much the man wanted to get it right. I wrote it down because it felt like something that mattered. It mattered. Their testimony would matter. And there was something else, something I found not in an office or an attorney's records, but in the vineyard. In my father's office. The small room in the barn where he kept his notebooks, 22 years of them, every vintage, every decision, the specific archive of a man who believed what you wrote down was what you committed to. On a shelf behind the 2019 harvest notebooks, a sealed envelope, my name on the front, in his handwriting. I found the envelope on a Wednesday in July. I had gone to the vineyard, still in my name legally while the estate was in dispute, a fact that Dana had moved quickly to establish, to walk the vines. Not for any legal reason, because I had not walked them since before my father died, and because the summer was moving through the growing season without anyone who knew the vineyard looking at it carefully. And that bothered me in the specific way that a farmer is bothered by neglect of living things. I walked the blocks. The Pinot Noir on the upper slope, the Chardonnay, the Pinot Gris, the Gruner Veltliner, that never quite worked but that he had kept anyway. I stood in it for a long time. And then I went to the barn. The notebooks were where they had always been. I was not looking for anything. I was touching things, the specific grief gesture of someone in a space that belonged to someone they have lost. I pulled out the 2019 notebook. The envelope was behind it. Sealed. My name, his handwriting. The date on the front, February 10th, 4 days before the hospital signing. I called Dana before I opened it, not because I needed permission, because I needed a witness. She came to the vineyard that afternoon. We sat in my father's barn office. She put her phone on the desk, recording. I opened the envelope. Inside, a letter. 3 pages. Handwritten. My father's handwriting, not the careful print of formal documents, but the specific angular cursive of a man who'd been writing engineering notes for 40 years. I will not read you every word. Those words are mine. What I will tell you is the shape. He wrote about the vineyard, about what it was, and what it took, and what he believed it would become. He wrote about me, about the 12 years, about what he had observed. He wrote about my mother and about Ethan, not harshly, not in anger, but with the specific, clear-eyed quality of a man who knew the people in his life accurately and was trying to explain his decisions honestly. He wrote, "I am writing this because I have learned that some arrangements require more than a document. They require a record of the mind that made them. I am of sound mind today, February 10th. I know what I am deciding. I know why. And I know that there are people who will not agree with my decision. This letter is for Abigail, so that if the decision is ever questioned, she has not just a document, but a voice." His voice. On paper. February 10th, 4 days before the signing. 3 pages of his voice. The case went to probate court in October, 7 months after my father died, 4 months after I found the letter. I will not take you through every procedural step. They are many, and the law is slow in the way that the law is slow when something important is being decided carefully. What I will tell you is what mattered. Kathleen Adler testified. James Ortega testified. Arthur Reese testified. The handwriting analysis, conducted by an expert Dana had retained, a forensic document examiner who had been doing this for 24 years, identified specific characteristics of the filed document that were inconsistent with my father's known writing in the surrounding text. The signature was genuine. The surrounding text showed evidence of having been produced in 2 different sessions, the kind of inconsistency that appears when a document is assembled rather than created as a single unit. The letter was introduced as evidence. The judge read it in chambers. The 2 witnesses, Arthur's testimony, the forensic analysis, the letter. And there was one more thing. The Gruner-Veltliner. This is the detail that I think about most. My father, in the letter, had written about the Gruner, the block that never worked, the one he kept anyway. He had written, "I'm leaving Abigail the Gruner block, even though it doesn't work, because she knows why I kept it, and I want her to decide its future." That paragraph was in the letter. That paragraph was in the document Arthur had drafted. That paragraph was not in the filed document. The filed document had no mention of the Gruner, because whoever had replaced the document, whoever had prepared the version that gave the vineyard to Carol and Ethan, had not known about the Gruner, had not known it was specific enough, meaningful enough, particular enough to be worth including. It was a detail they had omitted because they had not been in the room on February 14th. They had not heard my father insist on including it. They had not understood that it was not a small thing, that it was exactly the kind of thing that proved the document they filed was not the document he signed. My mother called me in November, while the case was still pending. She called from the Portland house, the Westover house, the one she had been in since my father died. I answered. "Abel?" she said. "Mom?" I said. A long silence. "I want to explain," she said. "I am listening," I said. She told me what she told me. I will not reproduce all of it. Some of it is hers. The shape,
She had been afraid. Afraid that the vineyard, given entirely to me, would leave her with a Portland house and nothing. Nothing liquid, nothing accessible, nothing that felt like security. She went to Ethan. Ethan had arranged it. She did not use the word fraud. She said they had made adjustments. She said she was sorry. She said she had told herself that what she was doing was only what was fair. It wasn't fair, I said. Fair to whom, Mom? Not to me. Not to Dad. He told you what he wanted. You changed it. He was so ill, she said. In March. In February he was clear. I was there. Arthur was there. 2 nurses were there. He was clear. A long silence. Ethan said, Mom, I'm not angry at you the way I am angry at Ethan. I want you to know that. I understand you were frightened. I understand what fear does. But I can't let this stand. Not for me. For him. She was quiet. I know, she said finally. We did not speak again before the ruling. The ruling came in February, 11 months after my father died. 12 months after the Valentine's Day signing. I was in Dana Ewan's office. She read me the ruling over the phone. She was downtown. I was at the Vineyard, in the barn office, sitting at my father's desk. The harvest notebooks, the shelf where the envelope had been, the window that looked out over the lower slope, where the morning fog moved through the Dijon clones on the lower slope. A bell? Dana said. Did you hear me? I heard you, I said. How are you? I thought about that question. I'm at the Vineyard. I'm going to walk the vines. She was quiet for a moment. Go walk the vines, she said. I went. Marsh Vineyard released its first vintage under my sole ownership last October. The 2022 Pinot Noir from the Upper Slope block, the same block I had been managing since I was 22. We made 460 cases. It was the best wine we had ever produced. Not because I did anything my father hadn't taught me, because the 12 years of being taught had finally produced something that was mine, fully mine, completely mine, without qualification. The first case went to Arthur Reese. He called when he received it. He said, "Your father would have opened this at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday and told himself it was for quality assessment purposes." I laughed. The first real laugh in a long time. "He would have," I said. "He would have been right," Arthur said. My mother and I speak occasionally now. Not often, not with the warmth that I am not yet able to fully access, but occasionally. She is in the Portland house. She has what my father intended for her, not more, not less. I have thought about this, about whether what I felt in the early months was anger, and whether what I feel now is something else. What I feel now is more like clarity, the clarity of a situation that has been resolved correctly. Not happily, not without cost, correctly. My mother made a choice. Ethan made a choice. Those choices had consequences. The consequences were delivered by the court and by the forensic examiner, and by 2 nurses who wrote things down because things mattered enough to write down, and by my father, who had known,
4 days before he went to the hospital that he needed to leave more than a document. He needed to leave a voice. Ethan. He has not contacted me. I have not contacted him. The legal separation of what he did from what I am doing now is, Dana called it, a separate matter that you can pursue or not pursue. I have not pursued it. Not because I believe it is not worth pursuing, because I have a vineyard to manage, and a harvest to plan, and a vintage to release, and approximately 460 cases of Pinot Noir to sell. That is what I'm doing with my time right now. There is a version of this story where I pursue every consequence. There is also a version where I take what is mine and build what my father wanted built, and let the vineyard be what he spent 22 years making it. I chose the second version. Not because I am generous, because the vineyard is the point. The vineyard was always the point. The Gruner Veltliner. I have not removed it. I have not replanted it. I went to the block on the morning after the ruling came down, and I stood in it for about 20 minutes. It is still not quite working. The soil on that corner of the property is different. The drainage is wrong, the aspect is wrong. The Gruner wants something that the Chehalem Mountains do not naturally provide. My father knew this. He kept it anyway. I know why. He kept it because a vineyard that only grows what is easy is not a vineyard that is fully understood. You need the block that is difficult. You need the rows that push back. You need something that reminds you every year that the land has its own opinion, and your job is to work with it rather than simply impose your will. The Gruner is my father's opinion, still present in the soil, still not working, still here. I stood in it and I thought, I'm going to figure you out. Not this year, but eventually. Because that is what you do with something that matters. You stay, you learn, you come back every season, and you pay attention, and you accept that understanding takes longer than you want it to, and you stay anyway. That is what my father did for 22 years. It is what I am going to do. That's the whole story, or the part I'm ready to tell. I want to say something about documents, about the specific, quiet, powerful act of writing something down and leaving it where it can be found. My father wrote a letter on February 10th. He did not tell me about it. He put it in an envelope with my name on it, and he put it behind the 2019 Harvest Notebook in the barn office. He left it for me to find. Not immediately, he could not have known when I would find it, but eventually, when I needed it. He had been an engineer for 30 years before he became a farmer. Engineers understand that systems fail. They build redundancy. He built redundancy. A signed document at the hospital, a witnessed signing, Arthur Reese's records, and behind the 2019 notebook. A voice, his own voice on paper, February 10th, saying what he intended and why he intended it, and who he was when he intended it. Sound mind. His words. His date. The Gruner Veltliner he wanted me to decide the future of. If you are in a situation where what you know and what the record shows is different, build the record. Find the witnesses. Find the documents. Find the attorney who has been waiting for your call. And look behind the 2019 notebook. The thing you need is often there, where someone who loved you put it before you knew you would need it. I am still at the vineyard. The 2023 harvest begins in 4 weeks. The upper slope Pinot Noir is looking extraordinary. The Gruner is still not quite right. I am still working on it. Thanks for listening.